Hi, I'm Sean O with Rest Equip Pro, and we're here today continuing with the Robocoup Immersion Blender series. All right, we're back here at the Rest Equip Pro table. Today we're doing the Robocoup Immersion Blender series. Now we started earlier, we've got an introduction, we kind of looked at the different segments. We've looked at the small mini handheld MPs. Now we're moving up to the meat and potatoes of the line, the MP 450 Turbo series. Now this machine is the most popular machine in the line. It's an 18-inch shaft, removable bell, removable cord. We're going to talk about that, removable and replaceable. But first let's touch on the MP series in general. So we've talked about the compacts and the mini series. And we're now into the large machines, and we wonder, why are there so many? Robocoup makes more immersion blender models than anyone else by far. And Robocoup makes over 28 different immersion blenders in every size, from the micro that you saw all the way up to the 800, which is about this tall. So to give you an idea, we're going to work with the 450 today because it's the most popular model with the greatest application, because it's used in one of the most ubiquitous and iconic vessels in food service. You see them everywhere. It's the white plastic pickle bucket. I don't have one of those with me today, but we're going to use a food grade container, 22 quart, replicates that 5-gallon bucket. Now when we talk about immersion blenders, the reason that we talk about all those different sizes is an immersion blender, the size of it and the length of the shaft is the size it is because it's designed to be used in a specific sized vessel for a certain duty load, and that's why the motors are independently designed and they are individually designed for each model. Every model has a different motor that uses a different amount of power because it is designed specifically for that size. So it optimizes the strength and torque, so as opposed to other imported machines that may have all the same motor in the whole line. You don't know whether the small ones are underpowered or overpowered, or the big ones are overpowered or underpowered. They've all got the same motor. That just doesn't seem like that really works. But regardless, for any size, so to speak. So if you have a bunch more volume, well, that motor's working harder than it would if there's a bunch less volume if it was in a smaller model. So I don't get how the other guys work. But I know how we work, and this is the way that you need to do it. So the 450 is the most popular. When we talk about shaft size and the size of the vessel, this is what we're talking about. You'll notice that the size of the shaft goes to the bottom of the bucket and can rest, and the motor is not going to submerge itself in your product. So that's the important part. So if earlier we were using the handheld mini micro and we had this 5-gallon bucket full of material, and we're trying to mix that bucket with a tiny handheld with a 6 or 7-inch shaft, you're not even going to get in there, so you can't even mix it. And if you tried to go deeper, you would submerge your motor base in the product and ruin it. That's what this is all about. So, you see I've got the 18-inch shaft here, 450. You've got our buckets, will be full of stuff. You would turn it on. You could turn it on and lock it on and leave it. And some people are inclined to, with big vats of soup and steam kettles and stuff, inclined to put an immersion blender in there, turn it on, lock it on, walk away because they think, oh, it's going to take 5 or 10 minutes or something. Well, I'm here to tell you that it probably is done in a minute or two, and the other 8 or 10 minutes, it's just spinning around and it's already done. But what happens if you leave it too long, locked and left in hot liquid especially, is it just stays in there too long. It doesn't need to be in there, and all you're doing is migrating heat up the shaft into the motor. And so you can hurt the motor over time if you leave it in hot stuff locked on that you don't need to do. So the point is, these machines are very powerful, and whatever process you're doing, it should really only be a minute or two. If it needs more than that, then it may need physical agitation, meaning you may need to get in there if you have a lot of very thick ingredients and that sort of thing. Let's talk about what these were designed for originally. They're designed to be placed in a vessel like this, turned on, and the bell housing creates a vortex against whatever surface you're working at. For instance, you could set it vertically on the floor of the vessel. You could set it at an angle, and this is the one I like personally, and it creates a vortex down here on the corner that gets all the material rolling. Now the idea of an immersion blender is once all the material has rolled through, for instance the surface of your material is moving and you see it's gone through, you probably blend it as much as you need to unless you really need to get to full puree, and then you just need to go another minute or two. What I'm trying to say here is the number one reason for failures is operations where they lock it on and leave it in a pot, and they might walk away, it might be there for an hour. Okay, so that's just not good for it to run that long. It doesn't have to. You would have done a lot more work on other stuff by that time. Don't want to overburden that, but that's the way it works. So 5-gallon bucket, we could turn it on, and away we go. The other feature, the things we want to talk about, is maintenance on these machines. And Robocoop is the leader in the industry because their machines are all designed to be fully maintained for your entire career. So what do I mean by that? Well, we've got a removable bell housing. It's got a removable blades and shafts. Every piece and part in any kind of Robocoop machine can be replaced. So it is a lifetime or career machine, I call it. So the bell housing removable, we've got a tool here for that. This is kind of important, so we're going to show you how this works. This is the blade removal tool. What this is for is actually it's a wrench and a device to keep the blade from rotating, and that goes on this end like this, so you can hold it, and then the wrench goes in the other side, like so, and what that happens is the blade can't spin around, so now you can remove the drive socket that turns the blade. So how would you replace it is remove the drive socket, the blade and shaft come out the other end, you clean it, replace it, there's an O-ring in there too, we put it back in, use the tool to hold the blade and tighten it back up. There we go. And that is how you would remove your blade for cleaning and sanitization. It's not something you need to do every day. It's something I'd look at every couple of weeks or so. If you do a lot of hot, though, imagine the #1 application, hot soup, that's something you do want to look at because the action of the blender itself creates so much pressure there that it can slowly migrate foodstuffs up the shaft and create. And one of the #1 failure reasons for any immersion blender out there is foodstuffs getting up in the shaft. It dries that night, the next day, whatever, and it builds up stuff in there that eventually seizes the shaft, makes it not want to turn, create friction and heat and so forth. So that's how that works. So we want to keep it clean, and that's why you can replace all the parts on a Robocoop immersion blender. So we've got the bell housing. That goes back on. That goes on and slips in, rotates in. Bell housing on. We've got the wrench. Let's talk about the power cord for a minute. This is a new design for Robocoop. This is a removable and replaceable power cord for the MP's Turbo Series. Now, how you do this is it is push fit and pull out, but how you release it is with this tool that comes with your other tools, and what it is this little tiny pin device that goes under the handle right here, and let's try and get a close-up on that. Come on in, Doug, and we'll take a look, and right there's a tiny hole, and this pin goes in that hole, and you grab it right there and press it into the hole, and that releases the cord. So the reason that there is now a replaceable and removable cord when there didn't used to be is that it was very common in years past for folks to take their immersion blender when they're done with it, and they wrap the cord up in a coil, and then they turn over here and they go to the wall somewhere, and they look up here, and you'll walk in the kitchen and see their immersion blender hanging by the cord on the wall. Well, over time, we would always end up having issues, and so they'd be replacing cords. To replace an older cord that was not removable, it took a service call. So we want to avoid that. Hence, Robocoop has designed the removable and replaceable cord. So that's been one of the best improvements in the last few years. We really love it. Works great. Operators all enjoy it. The one thing people will call me and ask about, and they'll say, hey, I can't get my cord out. Or they'll say, hey, I can't get my cord in. And that's because, once again, you need to use the little tool. If you lost the tool, anything that size in the hole will work fine. So that's okay. You can do that. So we're going to use the tool again. We can put the cord in there. There it is. Okay. We're good to go. So we're going to be right back. We're going to show you how this works. We're going to set this up, and we're going to watch the action of the MP450 Turbo. So we're back at the table with the MP450 Turbo immersion blender from Robocoop. We're going to fire it up. We're going to show you some of the action, how it works, and a couple other features here. So we've talked about blade removal, the bell housing being able to be removed and sanitized, everything being able to take apart. We're back together. We talked also about the new removable cord and replaceable cord. One thing to note as we're ready to roll here is that when your new replaceable cord is in and you've used the tool and it's correctly installed and you've plugged it in, you've got a green go light on the front. That's a new LED, so it tells you that you're good to go, the cord's in, you're powered on, you're ready. So how this operates is we've got an on-off trigger right here. You've got these two icons and two different buttons on the top. You've got unlock on the top, you've got lock on the side. And how this works is you need to hit unlock to turn on, and then you can push lock while it's on to lock it on and let it keep running. You could, for instance, turn it on and let go with your finger and hold that on-off button and do it that way, and you're in control of that, and it stops as you let the button off. Or you could place it, as a lot of operators do. There are operations where this is required, though I did speak earlier about not letting it go on too long and letting heat migrate up into your motor. But you could lock it on, put it into the vessel. We have, once again, the 5-gallon vessel is approximately the 18-inch shaft on a 450. So one other feature back here, you'll see this molded in lug on the back of the body right here, and that is for vessels and things like this that are long enough, and if they're any deeper, you can hang it by that lug right there on the rim of the container, and that's what that's for. So we're going to press unlock, and then press lock so it stays on. We're going to run it. We're going to get a close-up of the action there, and then we're going to do a little trick here that's kind of fun. So we'll start it up. About halfway through, we're going to add this 2 cups of kidney beans to the mix. And the idea is so you can get a visual of how the action and the turbo action of the immersion blender works. So we'll start. We're going to lock it on. There we go. Now, you can see right here, you can see the blade spinning. You can see the action that's created. You can see how fast the water is spinning right here. Okay, so we're going to take the kidney beans. We're just going to go in. You ready? Keep an eye on it. And you'll see right down here, you can see the turbo action. You can see how the material goes through the blades and gets cut and gets blended in finer and finer. We let that go another minute or so, and you can see how all the pieces are getting smaller and smaller and getting recut. Okay, we're going to turn it off. We do that by unlock and the on-off button and let go, just like that. That turns it off. So you'll see, you saw the action in the bottom. You saw as the material got into the blades how it starts chopping and blending, and then you see the end result. We've got 2 cups of kidney beans that are now blended into that water. There's tiny, tiniest shards of the skins barely floating around in there still. You could theoretically, you could get the rest of those if you let it keep going. This purpose of all water with a few beans is obviously not optimum, but this is why I do this for demonstration so you can see the action. If it was a full soup or a stew, there'd be a lot more stuff in there, and it'd probably blend out and could get smoother. The ingredients would also be cooked, so that would also help for the blending. That's the main purpose of immersion blender usually, is that bisque, that hot soup, that blending items on the stove specifically. That's why you bring the appliance to the food, not the food to the appliance, as opposed to other methods of preparation. And that's why the RoboCoupe immersion blender line is the finest, most heavy-duty immersion blenders that you can get out in the food service industry. For this and other tips and tricks, we'd really like you to subscribe and hit that button on the Rest Equip Pro channel, because we try and bring you the very best. Because I'm Sean O, the Rest Equip Pro.